welcome to my channel. So today's video is a first for many reasons. It is the first video I am doing in collaboration with another creator, and that creator is John LORDAN. It is the first time I have really closely worked with a family member in the process of looking into a case. And it's also the first time I have stayed up pretty much all night working on a case because I was that baffled by it. So definitely sit down, put your thinking caps on. I will get more into what exactly the collaboration is in a minute and more details into this. But for now, I will let you guys know that today's video is on the case of Noah Davis, who was a 24-year-old man that went missing in Ringgold, Georgia on a plethora of different dates, which again, I will get into in just a minute. This case is not a cut and dry case. You cannot go onto Google, you cannot go onto anything, you can't even go onto the police reports and get a very good idea of what exactly happened and, information collected since all of this started. Timelines have incredible discrepancies all across the board. Multiple people have different timelines. A lot of them do not make a single bit of sense. Allegations are being thrown around, life-ruining allegations, and it's just a very sensitive case. So this has been a very delicate one for myself to work on, and I'm sure John as well. So I'm interested to see his video. So I want to state before I get into mine that the main focus here is and always should be Noah. Unfortunately, something that I've noticed as a pattern in this video from all parties involved is that there's been a lot of I'm calling it side scramble because I don't know what else to call it. There's been a lot of side scramble going on that's really taken the focus away from Noah himself. It's all, I think, out of good intentions, but it has just made a mess of this case. So it's been a disaster to go through, and I really want to reiterate before I start this that the main focus is Noah. I will be going through the timeline in my video as best as I could. It does involve some of the allegations and discrepancies and things that I will briefly talk about, but John LORDAN's video is going to focus on the speculation portion of all of this. I'm sure he will add in a few other things into his video, but he's actually going to be interviewing the brother of Noah Davis, Joshua Wright. Me and John both had the opportunity to meet him at CrimeCon. Marissa from the Vanish podcast has covered his case. She did a 3-part series. All of that is, again, very important for you guys to listen to. I will have it linked down below. They're each an hour long, if that tells you anything about this case. But we had the opportunity of being introduced to him through Marissa. He was really looking for some help when it came to publicity for Noah's story and getting his information out there, and obviously John and I were more than willing to help. So there will be an interview with Joshua on John's channel, and I am sure after you watch this video you are going to have a lot of questions, and he will probably be answering most of those in John's video. I do want to say, when you get to the end of this, if you have any questions left over, leave them down below and I will try to send as many as possible over to John so he can incorporate some of those into his list of questions. So, wow, I know you guys hate it when I have a long intro, but this one is 100% necessary. There are lives literally on the line when it comes to this case. There are so many discrepancies that you are going to be mind blown by the end of it, and yeah, so just buckle in and get ready because here we go. Noah had a difficult upbringing. His mother ended up struggling with addiction for a good portion of his life and eventually COPD, which ended her own life.
Noah was my baby, and Noah, it was me and Noah a lot. He was just a wonderful son to me. He was so good to me. He would do anything for me.
His main role model in life was Josh, who was his half-brother technically, but they grew up together, did everything together. It's kind of who kept him on track because Noah himself, the older he got, ended up falling into drug addiction as well. He actually started struggling with drug addiction at a pretty young age and ended up in and out of the system. Every time he would try very hard to get better, he would end up around this circle of friends that just kind of drug him back over and over and over again. We've talked a little bit about drug addiction on this channel before. for, because their cases 9 times out of 10 are treated horribly. They are not seen as people, you know, with someone who loves them, brothers, sisters, fathers, sons, daughters, you know, grandparents. They're seen as less, and usually that's how the case gets treated, and this is no exception to that at all. Months before Noah disappeared, he ended up back in jail on January 12th, 2014, and he ended up back there for a parole violation. He actually failed a drug test. Now again, this was not something very uncommon for him. Every time he tried to leave the lifestyle, the same crowd came, found him. I know there's some point there where, you know, there is self-accountability, but he very obviously, to people around him that cared about him and to the department that ended up investigating this situation, he very obviously wanted out. But we all know drug addiction is a horrific disease, and it's so difficult to pull yourself out of it, especially when you have these friends coming back and kind of dangling it in front of your face. I actually have heard a phone call between Noah and his mother when he ended up being put in jail, and he was telling her all about, you know, how he wrote a letter to her explaining how it happened. He was apologizing and saying, one thing that really stuck out to me, he kept telling her, "I need Carter's Hope," which is a rehab facility. He said, "I need Carter's Hope. I need to learn how to live without drugs. They need to teach me. They need to help me." It was the most heartbreaking thing to hear, because you could hear in his voice that he knew what he was doing wasn't right, and he knew what he was doing was going to keep landing him in trouble, and he knew he needed help and was admitting it. And just to see how events unfolded after that makes hearing that 10 times worse, at least in my opinion.
I need Carter's Hope, Mama, because it's going to teach me how to live without drugs. You hear me? I need Carter's Hope.
I know you need some rehab. I know that.
Exactly, because listen, Carter's Hope is going to teach me how to live without drugs and get me a job and all that good stuff, you know?
His mother had eventually gotten clean, and he was trying to follow in her footsteps, and she was begging him to, because she had lived the lifestyle for a while and knew the dangers that could come out of it. That's why she ended up with COPD. That's why she only had 18% left of one of her lungs and only was given a few years to live. So it was this big family struggle where they all kind of struggled downhill together, and then were trying to struggle back uphill, but they kept losing Noah along the way and trying to drag him back up. And this really did seem like the final straw. Like, he really would go to this rehab and he would be better. On Saturday, July 12th, 2014, Noah was in fact released from jail, and he had one condition for his release, and it was something he wasn't too upset about. That was that he had to go to some sort of rehab facility. Now, of course, he wanted to go to Carter's Hope. So this was already set up, and he was supposed to go on July 22nd to check in. So I personally don't understand this, and I have heard his brother speak about it, that it didn't make a lot of sense to let someone known to struggle with drugs out of jail for failing a drug test and kind of give them this big period of time before they can go to a rehab facility, because that's kind of allowing them a lot of time. It's enabling, you know, them to fall right back into where they were before. So that's just kind of one thing that bothered me, but at least there were plans, and he was excited to go. Rehab was paid for, the date was scheduled, and at this point he was just a free man for a little over a week. And at first he seemed to be treating it the right way. He got in contact with a few of his friends, and I'm pretty sure all of them had struggled with drugs at one point but had gotten clean and were working on their health and bettering their lives and getting themselves on track. So he did immediately migrate to the best possible crowd he could have chosen. He hung out with one of his friends that took him to dinner. They went to the gym. This friend, as I said, was sober. It really did keep his mind in check. But the same friend that was sober kept kind of bugging him about the fact that he needed to call his parole officer. And for some reason, Noah seemed very hesitant. He didn't want to call him. He knew if he called him, he'd probably have to meet him. It was this big ordeal, and come to find out, just in the couple of days since he'd been home, Noah had taken Adderall, which I think, from what I've read, is something that he had struggled with before, was taking Adderall from other people, taking their prescriptions. So he had slipped up already, and he was terrified. He finally called, everything was fine, the situation was handled, but you kind of see where he slowly started off okay, and then things started trickling downhill. But overall, it was an incredibly exciting time for everyone in Noah's family. His mother absolutely loved him. Noah and his mom Janice had the best relationship As I said, they kind of struggled through addiction together. They struggled through getting over addiction together. And since his mother was very, very sick, Josh, along with Noah especially, took a ton of care of her. I think the stepdad was in the picture at this point still, but during the day and all of that, they, made sure she had her medication, made sure she ate with it, took her anywhere she needed to go, to the doctor or wherever, because, she didn't have her driver's license, didn't have a vehicle, all that. So, they were her main caretakers. So obviously she was excited to have her son out of jail. So it seemed like this high on life. They had struggled for so long, as a lot of families who have addiction involved do. It was just a happy moment for everyone. However, this is where things really start to go downhill incredibly quickly. Josh, Noah's brother, ended up being arrested on July 22nd, which was also the day that Noah was supposed to report to his rehab facility. Now, this doesn't seem like it might be relevant to the story, but I personally think it could be massively relevant to the story, which is why I'm involving it. For multiple reasons, Josh and the police department didn't really get along very well. It was just kind of a difficult situation, and for reasons I'm not going to mention in this video, Josh's license was suspended and he ended up being arrested at a gas station for that, and the car was left at the gas station, I'm pretty sure because Josh wasn't actually driving it, so they couldn't impound it. At least I think that's how that went. So in the midst of all this happening, obviously, this was another big situation for the family. Noah ended up never showing up to Carter's Hope, and I've spoken to the family and no one really knows why. And it's confusing to everyone because the rehab was paid for, like everything was ready to go, and there's a lot of people involved in this case that do not agree with each other whatsoever, like family and, outsiders. There are so many people, the police department, but the one thing that I noticed that they all agree on is that he was excited to go to Carter's Hope. So the fact that he didn't go absolutely confused everyone now that they're looking back on it. Only a few knew exactly when he was supposed to go, so it's not like a lot of people could have said something had they noticed he didn't. And even, I'm sure when they did, he kind of brushed it off. So 2 days later, on July 24th, Noah had a friend take him to the jail that Josh was in. So at around 10:46 a.m. that morning, Noah sent a text message to this friend and said, "Hey, can you give me a ride to the jail? I've got to go pick up my brother's belongings," because the car was still sitting in the parking lot of this gas station, and obviously Josh did not want to have it towed, so he signed over all of his belongings to Noah. Noah was supposed to come pick them all up from the jail, the key, everything, and then go and pick up the car and take it back to their parents' house. And then Noah was supposed to come and pick Josh up from jail when he was released. Now, Josh had been told when he got into jail it was probably going to take a little over a week because they didn't have a judge he could sit in front of until then. So there was really no telling how long exactly Josh was going to be in jail. So this friend that Noah texted at 10:46 asked where he was, and he said he was at America's Best Inn, which is incredibly important for you to remember when we get later into this story. So this friend came and picked him up, and at exactly 12:56 p.m., Noah signed a document that I have seen. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to show it here. If it's here, you'll know. If it's not, you'll know why. But there is documentation showing that Noah on that day, on the 24th, did in fact sign for all of these items. Now, once Noah got them, he obviously went over to the Mapco gas station and picked up Josh's truck. Now, from here on is when, everyone's kind of relying heavily on Noah's social media, because not a lot of people saw him that are willing to come forward and say they saw him at this point. I think family themselves only saw him a handful of times between now and, when he technically probably went missing. It's confusing, guys. I told you, please bear with me. I promise I'm trying to get this out as easily as I can. But the only thing we know of Noah from the 24th to the 27th is from the phone that he picked up. that was in Josh's possession. But we also can't say for sure that it was Noah using the phone. So this is where everything kind of gets very, very confusing. There were multiple phone calls, outgoing and ingoing, for the next couple of days. And then the 27th is when we know kind of a more factual bit of information about Noah's whereabouts. So that day, Noah and one of his female friends were dropped off at a Walmart that was very, very close to where his family lived. His uncle and his family lived on the same property, just separated by a short strip of woods, and then they walked home to the uncle's house. So no one's really sure what happened in this time frame. No one really knows exactly what time it was, I don't even think. But when the girl and Noah got back to the house, there was some sort of argument. There were two males that came to pick up this female when Noah kind of left her there, and the uncle witnessed it as well. And every single one of these people say this is the very last time anyone physically saw Noah. After this argument, he apparently stormed off into the woods in the back of the uncle's property, which it's pretty safe to say he more than likely was heading to his mom's house. I know his mom was in the hospital at some point during all of this. I'm not exactly sure when the dates were, so I don't know if she was home or not. But if he got into an argument with a female for any reason and he was kind of over it, I can see him walking through the woods just to get away for a minute and get to his mother's house. So the next day, on the 28th, which is listed by Josh, Noah's brother, as the last day he made contact with anyone, so the day he technically went missing, not much is really heard from Noah again until about 9 p.m. when he starts texting a female about selling Josh's truck. Now, he sent this to this woman, and about 17 minutes later, his uncle texts him and says the truck isn't in the Target parking lot. Now, this is the last time he responded to anyone. All he said to his uncle was, like HMMM, and then his uncle says, I think they towed it, and then silence from all of Noah's social media. I heard all of this information and had so many questions for just a little amount of time. I wanted to know why Noah would have sold his brother's car. I wanted to know why his uncle thought the car was parked in a Target parking lot. I wanted to know why the uncle was going to try to find the car if, you know, Noah was trying to sell it to someone else. It was just very confusing. So I ended up finding out that Noah had told his uncle a few days before that the car had broken down in the Target parking lot and never really mentioned it again, which made sense when I heard it. So then I started thinking about why Noah would want to sell his brother's truck, and then everything kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. So Josh, Noah's brother, has said, not to me personally, but on the Vanish podcast and a few other places, that his brother was very respectful of his property. He never touched his property. He knew when, you know, stuff was not his and he did not have the rights to it. And something that really stuck out in my brain is the phone call where he was speaking to his mother when he was first in jail in, I think, January. He said, make sure no one touches, I think it was his drawings.
Don't let nobody touch my drawing or motorcycle.
I already know that. I know what's special to you.
But he made it a point to say, make sure no one touches my stuff. So there seemed like this overall respect for others' belongings. So the only reason that could come to my mind that he would try to sell another person's vehicle without permission is if it was an emergency. So then I started kind of going down the thought process of, I think he owed somebody money. I think what happened is he got home, he started off great, and then he started kind of trickling back down to relapsing and falling back into using drugs. Now, I think it's very possible that, as I said, he owed someone money and he was in a very hot spot at the moment. You know, he was hanging out with people, talking to tons of people, you know, with family, and then all of a sudden he just like kind of lost track of everybody. It could also explain why he told his uncle the car was in this Target parking lot and the car was never there when the uncle went to go and check. You know, that could have been to get his uncle to look in a different place, or, you know, maybe he was setting it up to look like someone had stolen the vehicle to explain why it was gone, since he did obviously have plans to sell his brother's truck. So to me, this just screams a situation of someone struggling with drugs again and owing someone a lot of money, or possibly he had owed someone money for a very long time, and now that he was out of jail, they were coming to collect it. All we really know is that he very suddenly was trying to sell something that was worth a lot of money that was not his, and suddenly he vanished. So I'll leave the rest of the speculation to you. For the next couple of days, Noah showed no activity from his cell phone communicating with other people. There were no more outgoing Facebook messages. I have personally seen some messages and spoken to his brother. He had consistent messages going with multiple different people from the day he got out up until the 28th, and everything literally just stopped. But multiple phone calls were coming into the phone. There were a few outgoing phone calls. Nothing lasted for more than maybe like a minute, so it could have been, you know, a stranger accidentally answering the phone, or, you know, maybe he left the phone back at the house, because at this point we just know on the 28th was the last time he spoke to someone, and we don't really know his whereabouts, so it's very possible he could have dropped the phone back off at the house, or, you know, lost it somewhere, left it in someone's car. So that doesn't necessarily indicate that he was the one who was answering those phone calls. And then by August 7th, Josh was released from jail, and he was expecting Noah to pick him up, because Noah, after all, had all of his belongings, but instead his uncle was the one who came to pick him up. Now, Josh says it took quite a few minutes of just small talk before he finally was able to say, you know, get to the point, where is Noah? It was at this point that Josh's uncle said, Noah has not been seen for a few days now, and your car hasn't been seen either. Now, this obviously upset Josh, because at this point in time, everyone in the family thought, oh great, you know, he did. He went back to drugs, and, you know, he just took off with our property. He's going on like a little spree, but he'll be back. So this was the kind of mindset they were all in. However, it was imperative that he have his vehicle, his wallet, his phone, his laptop, his money, everything he needed was with Noah. He was very, very upset. So he did take to social media, you know, was saying, you know, please bring me all these items back. There are quite a few messages, text messages, of him asking for all these items back. And then finally, after the whole family speaking about it and the fact that the truck was also missing, and it was not very common for Noah to go away for a few days, even when he was in jail, he would write at least every 3 days or call every 3 days. And again, remember, as I said before, he took care of his mom. It was not expected of him to just disappear. So they obviously knew something was wrong, and Josh ended up calling into the police department and reporting his brother as missing and reporting his truck as stolen. Now, no one really knew 100% again if Noah had the truck. No one really saw him leave with any of this, and it was just kind of speculation, and they obviously didn't want to get him in trouble again, so they didn't want to say he's the one who stole the car, but obviously people kind of made connections. Now, this is where the main discrepancies come in, and this is where I spent hours trying to nail specific things down. So sit back, because I've got a lot of things to explain to you right now. Because not only are there a ton of discrepancies in the next few dates and times that I give you, but it's also the foundation on which a lot of people are accusing someone of something, and Josh just so happens to be the person in the middle of all of this. And again, John's gonna go deeper into all of this in his video, but because I was kind of in charge of the timeline, I had to address these very specific things. So Josh called, reported his brother and the truck missing on the same day he was released from jail, which was the 7th. And I will verify, I have seen documentation showing when his arrival date into the jail was and showing when his release is. Obviously, you guys are just going to have to trust me. I am not going to put up a document that has personal information on it like this document does. So I have visibly seen myself that he was released on the 7th. But as these discrepancies go, for some reason, the police say that this call and, you know, the report was made on the 15th of August, not the 7th, and the police are claiming that nobody was on the case until the 18th, which doesn't match Josh's date of the 15th. Now, you can see where a lot of people are starting to create these different allegations because, you know, Josh obviously comes home, his truck and items are stolen on the 7th, and a lot of people assuming, for obvious reasons, based off of this documentation from the police department, that nothing was reported for days, which would give Josh a pretty large opportunity to do something stupid. But this is where I dug into everything incredibly deep. So first, let me say what happened next. So when a report was made for Noah, a bolo or be on the lookout for Josh's truck was also sent out. And the same day, on the 7th, the truck was found, and it was at America's Best Inn, the same place that Noah said he was days before when he went to go pick up Josh's items. So I'm gonna play for you really quickly the clip of the police department calling Josh, letting him know that his truck had been found at America's Best Inn, but Noah was nowhere to be found. So this alone indicates that when the truck report was filed, so was Noah's, because when they found the truck, the department said for a fact Noah is not found with it. He is still missing. And then there was a couple other little bits of chatter about if they needed the truck towed or if Josh was going to go pick it up.
Call is now being recorded.
Yeah, I'm doing that because I can't find a pen. Sorry. I'm going to get that location again.
Okay, it's America's Best Value Inn.
Mike's here. America's Best Value Inn.
Yeah, it's on Camp Jordan Parkway, right there close to Ringgold Road.
Okay.
Now, Noah's not with it. He's nowhere to be found. Do you have extra keys to it?
I'm assuming, I'm betting that the key's in it.
Okay, well, here's the thing. They want to know if you want to go pick it up now or if they need to have it towed.
I'll come get it.
You want to come get it now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell them you're going to come and get it. Just like I said, if you want to pursue it, if you want to pursue charges, you need to go to Tennessee, because I talked to our detective. The whole thing happened in Tennessee. Your arrest happened. He took the vehicle from Tennessee.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
Right.
I talked to a detective just now.
All right.
Okay?
Okay, thank you, Officer Fry. That's good news, man.
All right, you're welcome. You're welcome, Mr. Wright.
All right.
You have a good one.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So to fix up this timeline, at this point, Noah was listed as last seen on the 20th of June, which, according to when he was released from jail, July 12th, is not possible. So that right there is already one discrepancy with the last time he was seen. There's no way he was last seen on the 20th of June when he got out of jail July 12th. So then we come to Josh calling in on the 7th, and the police report says he actually didn't call in until the 15th. Now this I've also proven that Josh's date is correct, and the police department does have down an incorrect date. So on a document, and if I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading it. I'm also going to have it up on the screen for you guys to look at, but you can see the date in the top. Statement date is August 15th. So it says that Deputy Fry responded to the location, and there was obviously a missing persons report put in for Noah. Last seen June 20th. Again, doesn't make sense. He didn't get out of jail until 12th of July. You go down a little bit further, and if you look down here, it says Mr. Wright's white Ford F-150 and the truck was found at America's Best Value Inn in East Ridge, Tennessee on August 7th, 2014 or August 8th, 2014. Now, the police is saying here that the truck was found on the 7th or the 8th of August, which coincides with when Josh says all of this happened, and coincides with the voicemail. I have seen the voicemail as well. This was also dated the 7th of August, and in the voicemail it is acknowledged by the officer that the car was found and Noah was not, indicating both reports had been put in by the 7th. So that right there already contradicts their date of not being put into the 15th and completely breaks the foundation of majority of the speculation being put out there by a lot of other sleuthers.
Okay.
Now, Noah's not with it. He's nowhere to be found. Do you have extra keys to it?
And this is what a lot of people are basing their speculations off of, and it is literally ruining people's lives because their information is incorrect. And, you know, you can't say that on June 20th was the last time someone was seen when, you know, this person wasn't even out of jail until July 12th, and then you can't say that this person had a report filed and they were missing as of the 15th when you have stated that the truck that was reported at the exact same time as you confirmed in your voicemail was made on the 7th of August. Boom. That right there just kind of destroys so many different timelines. And then on the 15th was when a detective was put on everything, which would make sense again as to why all of a sudden all this information was being done just with the wrong dates. So have mercy, you guys. I know that sounds like not a lot of information, but the level of sifting through documents and speculation and matching other official documents and dates up to make this timeline was a lot of work. And for some reason, a lot of people are paying attention to dates and not realizing that things aren't really matching up. And not on Josh's end, but on the police department's end. They still have him listed everywhere as last seen on June 20th, even though there is official documentation that he didn't get out of jail until the 12th, and then there's another official document where he signed for his brother's items on July 24th. It's just crazy. I don't know why the police department won't change any of this, because again, as I said, it's been the foundation for a lot of allegations from people against Josh, when in reality, they just really messed up the dates on the actual report. You know, you can't say someone was missing on the 15th and then further down in the same report say the truck was found and the missing person wasn't located on the 7th. You know, we can't time travel here, okay? So I just really, if you hear anything out of this entire video, that's one very important thing to keep in mind. So, moving on in this. Everything that happened, report was made on the 7th, car was found on the 7th, Noah was nowhere to be found. So Josh decided to go and get his vehicle for obvious reasons, and he was told basically that if anything seemed off about it to call the different area it was found in. So the car was parked crooked, the doors were unlocked, and the windows were down. So obviously someone just kind of got out of it, didn't care if they locked it up, nothing. Everything inside of it just could have been taken. Now when he looked, that was true. His laptop had been taken, quite a few other personal small items I think were taken, but majority of the stuff in the bed of the truck was not taken. So it looked like, you know, no one really robbed the truck, just a few things were taken out of it, because there was a hydraulic lift in the back of the truck, there were jumper cables, tools, a lot of things that people will steal. It's very easy, you can grab it with your hands, it costs a lot of money. So it didn't really seem like a robbery and the car was dumped. It was just kind of a very peculiar scene. There were pills spilled all over the front of the car that did not belong to either Noah or Josh. It was very strange. So Josh decided to go in and speak to the manager at the America's Best Inn, ask if there was any security footage. I was told that it was basically just a live feed. There was no recording of anything. They used it, I guess, for their own security purposes while they were working inside to monitor the outside situation. So that was not beneficial at all. And then on the 18th, police ended up going in and found that Josh was never a registered guest at the hotel. So nothing was really coming together. Nothing was making sense. And there were no signs as to where Noah would have gone. He had this truck. He had been at this inn for some point in time for whatever reason, but then he just vanished. And why did he leave the truck that he was trying to sell? So Josh ended up calling a locksmith because the key was not in the car. And if you also listen to the recording, you would know that he expected the key to be there, because again, he was kind of on the wavelength that, you know, Noah is just on a little adventure. You know, he's taking full advantage of this last, you know, little bit of time before he goes to rehab. Josh hadn't known when exactly he was supposed to go to rehab, just that he was supposed to go eventually, so there weren't any real red flags yet. And as any sibling, you get angry when your sibling takes your things. So he assumed that Noah had just run off with the key and didn't want to deal with him. So he ends up getting the car up and running and realizes that the battery was actually dead. So when he went and checked it, it looked like the battery had been taken out of the car and put back in the car quite a few times. So that could be the reason as to why it was left there. Later on, which I will dive into it deeper when I kind of get more to it, but Josh was able to find out that Noah had actually had the car and had been complaining to quite a few friends this entire time that the car kept breaking down. He kept having to ask for rides. So despite all of this information and, like I said before, seeing all these items gone from the car and the way it was parked, Noah seems to just have vanished. He vanished from social media in the middle of conversations. He vanished in the middle of, you know, his small break before he went to rehab. He vanished, you know, into thin air from his family that heavily relied on him and he would never, ever, you know, turn his back on. It just didn't make any sense, and people who knew him knew something was very wrong. Now, there are little to no article releases, no media releases of how exactly searches went. You know, the police department don't really talk a lot about it at all. They actually tend to avoid talking about this particular case. And I think it's very unfortunate because apparently because he missed a meeting he was supposed to have, he was quickly changed from a missing person to a fugitive. So he had a wanted label over his head. And I saw the detectives actually state that it probably was more beneficial to the case that he was wanted instead of just missing. And I had said before I saw this that, you know, while that seems to a lot of people like kind of a blow at first, when you scare people and someone thinks there's a fugitive out on the run or some bad guy out on the run, they're probably a lot more likely to report this person. So to me, that says that no one saw him. A missing person, people look over all the time. I see it personally through doing these videos that no one, like people see it, they're like, oh, that's sad, and then they move on. Wanted is totally different, and I honestly am worried as to what that means when it comes to what happened to him. A lot of people were very upset that he was placed as wanted and a fugitive instead of a missing person, but from, you know, police department perspective, I understand why they did it. They didn't know him very well, and from a legal standpoint, that is what he was. But everyone who was coming forward and speaking about this, and I've even seen police say to this day that he never wanted to run. He wasn't someone who was running away from his problems, running away from going back to jail, and the police department was essentially saying that at first. They're like, oh, he's not missing, he purposely ran away and you know it, and you know, we're not gonna look at this and that because he's just running from us. He doesn't want to go back to jail. But when there's so many questionable things happening around that disappearance, I feel like it needs to be checked into more. And I think, you know, while it's very important to keep in mind he did break laws and he was a wanted person, there also comes a point where you kind of need to look at other options based on the circumstances given to you, and I unfortunately think that wasn't really done at first. To top it off, he had been involved in drugs, and we already know that a lot of the times police departments treat cases where drugs are involved as kind of like a whatever, you know, they probably, something happened to them, drugs, they could have run off in a drug-fueled rampage, you know, they're hiding, they're just off doing drugs somewhere. We saw this in the David Gibson Smith case that I covered where, you know, he very obviously vanished off of a property, like bizarre as all get out, and the police department was just like, oh, well, he's just on drugs somewhere. At this point, Josh had been running a Facebook page made for Noah, talking about his disappearance, trying to alert everyone to it, so if anyone saw him, they could say something, because keep in mind again, he was involved in drugs. He had a lot of connections. He knew a ton of people, and getting to all those people and all these different outlying cities was proving very, very difficult, and no one really knew all the people that he hung out with. It was just kind of this big game of hoping the right person saw everything. So he was posting to this page, and keep in mind again that no one really knew exact dates of anything, the last time he was seen, talked to, whatever, because no one at this point had access to his Facebook page, and he used Messenger quite a lot. So a timeline was still in the works, and since the police department viewed him as a fugitive, Josh was kind of doing all that on his own. So he, you know, was having to amend the timeline as he went. He would find something, put it out there, later on say, never mind, that's not what happened, I found something that, you know, makes this make more sense, so this is really what happened. And I feel like that's why people have so many problems with this case and so many allegations have come about, because Josh was trying to figure things out on his own. Because I will say, from a personal standpoint, I had very limited information, as I told you before. So I basically, you know, had things that the police department would have had, the news said, like all those things. And I had a totally different idea of where this case was going and what was happening. It's kind of like having your blinders on. You know, when you look at one bit of information and you don't know any of the outliers, sometimes you don't know what exactly that bit of information means, and you can take it for face value, but you cannot in this case. And you know, that's kind of what was going on. He was trying to pinpoint these details, but these details looked like one thing until you added another bit of information, and then it all made sense. And that's why it's taken me days, and I mean over at this point 35-40 hours of research to get this together, because it is madness, and that's exactly what Josh was going through. He was trying to gather his own leads. He was trying to talk to people who last were known to have seen him, you know, having people coming to him saying, hey, he was with this person, he was with this person, they said they were doing this, there was an argument here, an argument there. He was trying to collect all this information and make sense of it. But again, as I've said, we are dealing with a group of people heavily into drugs. A lot of rumors, a lot of he said, she said, completely uninvolved nonsense, a lot of code names, things being spread around in jail. It was just a ton of information, and Josh was working it the hardest he could. He would send it into the police department, and they just butt heads the entire time because the police department feels like their toes are being stepped on, but Josh and his mother feel like there's not enough work being done. It was just a really stressful situation for everyone, and as I said before, I think it just got to the point where everyone was just trying to be right and trying to get to the most answers or trying to prove themselves, that it started drifting away from Noah and drifting away from, you know, the real reason why everyone is there, because everyone had just gotten so frustrated and angry. And this is why, again, this case is so important to me, because I want to help redirect the focus back to where it needs to be. It took 2 whole years and Noah not showing up to his mother's funeral for detectives to finally label him again as a missing person. He was not put into NamUs until 2016. So in that period of time, you know, someone could have been found somewhere. A body could have been found, and, you know, at first, you know, nothing came of it. Granted, at this point, I'm sure things have been done. People have been run through. DNA has been tested. But, you know, that's a long period of time where nothing benefiting the case was allowed to happen because they wouldn't list him as actually missing in a database. Josh and Janice also called in almost weekly to a sheriff's talk show. It's basically where the sheriffs of Catoosa County, where all this was happening, would go and sit down and take calls and answer questions and all that. And it came to the point where they were getting such little communication from the police department that they were resorting to calling here and asking, hey, any news on Noah? Like, hey, why hasn't our property been checked yet by cadaver dogs? Because all these people are coming forward, you know, their uncle included and these friends, saying that the last time he was physically seen was walking into the woods on the family's property, yet no one came and checked it. I think it took about 9 months and multiple calls into the sheriff's talk show for anyone to decide to bring dogs out there and search for a possible body. When someone is last seen at a location, it is imperative to search the location. This area could have held a lot of clues that now could potentially be gone, and they took so long getting dogs out there that there might be nothing left. On February 19th of 2016, just after he was put into NamUs as a missing person, DNA was collected from Josh and Janice. That was a mess of its own. I suggest you go listen to the podcast to hear about that. You know, it's expected to take DNA from family, you know, especially when NamUs is involved, because they want DNA to compare things to when they are running everything in their system. But they kind of contacted the family in a very bizarre way and, you know, didn't really give them a reason for the DNA. Didn't say, hey, we need it for NamUs, we need it for this, we need it for that. So Josh and Janice both stayed up all night long, petrified, thinking they needed it because there was a body that had been found, or, you know, Noah was located and was deceased and they needed DNA to compare. Like, they had all these things running through their mind of possibilities and were just left to sit with it. And then when they got there, instead of keeping things on track, they felt the need to complain. And I know there's a lot of butting heads just in general when it comes to police department activity and their work on cases and the family, because everyone thinks they know what's best. And this was just to another level like I've never seen before. It's just frustrating to see, you know. It's like when one side was trying to cooperate, the other side didn't want to, and it was just kind of back and forth, and it was because they just couldn't find this middle ground, really, and it was just a crappy situation, honestly.
The last time I saw Noah was, there he is. Last time I saw Noah, I was sick when he came out of the juvie or jail, and I was sick, but he didn't realize how sick I was. I kept my leg covered up. And when my husband come home, it was a Wednesday night, because I remember my husband saying, forget church night, you're going to emergency room. And I got up, and Noah was with me all that day, and I was walking with crutches, and Noah said, Mom, you're doing it wrong. Of course, everybody walks with crutches when you ain't got nothing wrong with you. But my leg, my knee was in such bad shape that I couldn't do it. So Noah picked me up, Mike drove the Jimmy around back because I was in the basement. So Noah got to see how big my knee was. I quit looking at it. It was so bad. So Noah carried me and put me in the Jimmy. And he told me, I said, now son, I want you to be good till I get back out. And I figured I'd be back home. And I said, I want you to be good, and when I get back out, I want to talk to you, I want to see you, I want to spend some time with you. And we just spent the day together. And he said, Mama, I love you, you go get better, and I'll see you when you get home. It was not a goodbye. It was not a farewell. It was later, Mom.
Time went on and authorities did acknowledge that they were searching different places. They were following a few of the leads that Josh was sending them. They were questioning a few people, revisiting some friends that they had talked to before. There were, I think, quite a handful of locations where people were claiming that Noah was buried or had been dumped, and they checked all these places and all of them completely cleared. Now, again, though, Josh felt like things weren't being done fast enough, and he really wanted FBI assistance. So he went to the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, and actually reached out to them asking for help. They told him they wanted him to come in and assist everything, you know, so they could see if they could take the case over, at least involve themselves. They said when he got there that he needed to take a polygraph test because the only sorts of information really for this case was Josh. Obviously, the police department did their own thing and had their own investigation going on. I will say, you know, they don't tell everyone everything. They don't always tell the family everything. They were worried that Josh was going to go post it somewhere. So there could be a lot of things that they looked into and searched that they just didn't feel comfortable sharing with everyone to protect the integrity of the investigation. And the only people that can confirm that is them themselves. But Josh himself, along with his brother Chase, got into Noah's Facebook page, found tons of information in the messages there that verified different times where he just kind of talked to people, and then when he dropped off the grid completely, there was just, you know, there was a lot of stuff that Josh himself found, and a lot of places that he found. He went through Google locations and found where the phone was in that time span. So basically they wanted to question him to make sure he was telling the truth. They questioned him, did a polygraph test. He obviously was willing to help, but then the person told him afterwards that he failed completely. And yet again, it was just another big headbutt with the government. He was essentially told by the administrator of the test, after he was told that he failed, that he thought that Josh had something to do with Noah's disappearance and he needed to just fess up and yada yada yada. And it was a really horrific experience for Josh because he kind of reached out to them and he thought finally, you know, a different agency is going to be looking over this because he'd had so many struggles with his own, and he thought a fresh pair of eyes, as everyone thinks, might make a difference in the case, which is highly possible. But to be kind of torn down like that and accused, it just was not obviously a great experience. And then his mother, who again was incredibly ill, managed to make her way up there and ended up also being questioned, I think, for about 2.5 hours. And something that's hit me very, very hard is that a day later, she ended up passing away. The next morning, after being with the GBI for 2.5 hours, she couldn't be woken up, and Josh and his stepdad and his daughter were all there. Josh was giving her CPR for 30 minutes, waiting on everyone to come. It's just the amount of toll all of this has taken on the family. It's one thing to just lose someone and not know where Noah is and not know if you're going to die before you ever see your son again. But to have these accusations thrown at you and, you know, your other son that you love so dearly, and to have it treated as if it's not of importance, you know, she was hanging on by a thread in hopes of seeing her son come home. And I think it just pushed her over the edge. And that's heartbreaking, you guys. Like, that is, oh, it makes me so mad.
It's hard to explain, but that's when things haunt me at night. Missing him. Wishing and worrying. I will get through this, and I'm keeping my health up, the best I can. Doctors don't give me good reports. They don't give me good report at all. To them, I don't have long to live. But I'm strong, I'm a fighter, and it's in God's hands, not doctors' hands.
So now Josh was the only person left, really, that was searching for Noah. He was a single father to his daughter. He had watched his mom pass away and tried to revive her. He watched basically her dwindle away, hoping, you know, that she would find her son before she passed away. And he felt like he had failed because he wasn't able to give that to her. And so it just was a huge blow for him. But he knew that he was the only person constantly advocating for Noah and bringing his story into the public eye. He posted nonstop, and he still posts to this day about his brother. It's everything his life has revolved around for years. His daughter is, you know, in the middle of all of it as well, trying to find her uncle. You know, it's just like, it's just heartbreaking. 2017, it appeared as if more work was being done on the case. They were looking into other leads again, checking out different locations, and it seemed to be in a more positive manner as well. Communication between Josh and the police department seemed to kind of cool down. Everyone, I think, kind of realized the situation and the importance of finding Noah and kind of centered themselves again. But then the lead investigator on Noah's case ended up resigning for incredibly unacceptable behavior that I will not repeat on this channel. And, you know, while it doesn't say anything about Noah's case in particular, it shows this man's moral compass. And he was in charge of looking into these cases, and because of what he did, it was very obvious that he focused on other things in the cases instead, and it's just another blow to the investigation. In January of 2018, Crime Stoppers offered up a $1,000 reward for any information on Noah's disappearance. For anyone out there watching this, I know I've said it in most of my videos, but I'm going to specifically say it again in this one because I think it is highly likely that whoever possibly did something to Noah will be watching this, or someone who knows something might be watching this. Crime Stoppers is completely anonymous. You can go in completely anonymous, no questions asked, give information that leads to the whereabouts of Noah or whoever might have done something to him, and if it goes through, money is instantly wired to your bank account. Again, no questions asked, completely anonymous forever. So there's $1,000 out there. You can go and you can claim it if you have the right information. And that's pretty much all there is to the case, and I've sat and I've thought and I've tried to figure out what on earth possibly could have happened to Noah, and at what time. On the 28th, we know he just drops off the face of the earth. Now, I don't want to say that the phone calls made from the phone were made by Noah because we have absolutely no idea. I feel like if he had the phone, he would have continued speaking to people over social media, and he just stopped. So that indicates to me that something happened at that point in time. Why, you know, in the few hours leading up to this, was he so desperately trying to sell things that didn't belong to him? I honestly think it's very possible that he owed someone a lot of money, and maybe his family was threatened. You know, maybe that's why he didn't ever show up to rehab. Maybe this person threatened his family and he knew he couldn't leave them with that sort of situation going on. Or maybe he felt like he couldn't go to rehab because he had to stay until his brother was home, and then all of this mess just kind of unfolded afterwards. He was selling a car 1 minute, and less than 20 minutes later he stopped responding to everyone. I'm wondering if maybe his time ran out. You know, someone gave him some sort of time frame and said, hey, we need our money by this time, and if you don't have it. I just, you know, find it odd that his last messages were just frantically, you know, trying to sell things, and then nothing. Obviously, at this point, I, as well as everyone else, is gravitating towards the fact that there was definitely foul play involved. He wouldn't have walked away. He loved his mother to death. His biological father also passed away in this time frame, and he had been slowly trying to have a relationship with him as well. So he lost both of his parents and still didn't come home. Especially his mother, you know, he took care of her. The last time he spoke to her, he was putting her into a car to be taken to the hospital because she needed to get surgery. And he told her, he was like, take care of yourself. I'll see you when you get back. But then he was just gone. It wasn't like him to just fall off the face of the earth like this. It just wasn't. And everything leading up to this indicates that someone was out for him, I think, and he met with foul play, which leads me to think that someone in that community 100% knows something and they're choosing to not come forward. I get when there's a lot of threats, and I get if you have information and you're watching this right now and you're scared, I understand that. Look at the chaos that it's created. Look at this video again and the people that it's hurt and the people that it's still hurting, and the mother that had to die without knowing where her son was. You know, look at what's going on, and the fact that you can call in anonymously and stop it. Why would you not choose to do that? Imagine if that was your son or your brother or your loved one, your mom, your dad, struggling, being accused of things that are insane. Imagine how that would make you feel. And I want you to think about that, and hopefully someone that watches this video or John's video comes back to all of this and comes to their senses and says something, because there's no way that Noah just vanished and not a single person knows something about it. He was in touch with way too many people before he disappeared. I haven't gone too deep into a lot of the information that I know because it does need to be kept private for obvious reasons. But he was in touch with a ton of people, and for him to just vanish and not anyone know anything, that's very hard for me to believe. Just keep in mind there is all this drama related around this case, and you are obviously going to see a lot more of it in John's video with the questions and talking about speculations, and if you have any specific questions, please leave them down below. And I think it's very unfortunate that so many things seem to have happened in this case that have ended up overshadowing Noah, from being labeled as wanted instead of a missing person, from people looking too deeply into dates that obviously the police department got wrong based on me piecing together all of the information, you know, making crazy allegations against the family and causing family turmoil, and, you know, even the family arguing with the police department and the police department arguing right back. It just seems like chaos instead of everyone sitting down for a minute and realizing that it's not furthering the case. It is causing, like I said, all this outside scramble that's distracting everyone and taking away from what needs to be done, which is finding out what happened to Noah. Noah is a human being, and he had issues, and that is a fact. But he was still loved by people very much, and he has people who are still hoping they get to hug him again and see him again, or at least figure out what happened to him and bring whoever was involved to justice. Most of the area where he disappeared is completely unaware of who he is because he didn't receive any media attention, and when he did, it was revolving around the drama and not the information. When it came to his disappearance, it was, oh, well, what's happening now that's causing feuds and anger, and you know, what family member's angry now and what can we read too deeply into. It was never about Noah, and I think that's really sad and unfortunate. Josh spent hours on Black Friday handing out flyers for Noah, of Noah, and not a single person knew who he was. Someone in that town or surrounding towns know what happened to him, and I hope that they decide to come forward, or at least someone decides to come forward, because the amount of struggle and hell this family has been put through that will never heal and go away is absolutely horrific. And I really hope the investigating agencies are able to sit down and realize this is not a pissing contest. I hope the family's able to sit down and realize this is not a pissing contest. It is about bringing a loved one home, someone who might be out there right now and, you know, watching all this happen. Would Noah be happy with it? That's a question everyone needs to ask themselves. So if you know something, please contact Crime Stoppers. I have all the numbers you possibly need listed down below. Please share Noah's face anywhere you can. On that note, you guys, I really hope you paid a lot of attention in today's video. Please don't forget to go and check out John's video. I can assure you there's so much more to this case. Like, he shows a complete other aspect of this case that I didn't even touch on in this. Whole other world of crazy going on over there. So don't forget to leave any questions you might have down below. I will try to send as many as possible to John. Go subscribe to his channel, leave him some love on some of his most recent videos, and watch them when you're waiting for his interview with Josh to go up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was our very first collaboration together, my very first collaboration on this channel in general, and I could not have picked a better case to cover together. I honestly could not have. And hopefully John and I together are able to get some sort of ball rolling, or at least focus put back where it needs to be. But thank you guys so much for watching. Really, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button so we can bring them home together, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.
This time that I borrowed, running too fast for the sun, and my eyes, they still burn.